Hello listeners, today we're going to be looking at the poem Corroboree by Udru Nunaku. Now this Indigenous woman is very important in Australian history. She was a very strong activist for Aboriginal rights, and she was actually the first Aboriginal woman to publish a book. It was a collection of poems called We Are Going, and this was published in 1964. So the poem we're looking at today, Corroboree, is one of those poems that was published in this book. So let's jump straight in. Hot day dies, cook time comes. So let's now discuss what this poem is all about. Whenever you want to try and figure out what a poem is saying, let's first try and see if we can learn anything from what we know about the author and what we know about the time that the poem was written. Okay, so I've already told us that this poem was written by Udru Nunaku, who is an Indigenous poet. And I've also told you that this poet was an activist for Aboriginal rights. So from that we can tell that during her time, the Aboriginal people did not have enough rights. Okay, they were treated unfairly. So we can tell that her poetry is going to be supporting the Indigenous people and perhaps trying to convey a message to the non-Indigenous population that the Indigenous people are worthy of rights and have a strong culture and such things like that. So with that knowledge, when we look at this poem again, we can see that perhaps she's obviously writing about Corroboree, and from the image I've provided here, and also just from the description in the poem, we can tell that this is an Aboriginal tradition of dance to tell stories. Okay, so Nunaku is writing this poem probably just to show the non-Indigenous population a piece of her culture and describe this tradition of storytelling through dance. So some specific techniques that are used in this poem. She uses some interesting words here. Talks about play about and spirit things. So are these words that we generally hear in our everyday talk nowadays? Words play about, spirit things. Somewhat, like we've obviously talked about playing and about, but play about as one word? Not really. So the language, there's a technique here, it's called, she's using idiomatic language. Now, idiomatic basically means specific language to a particular group of people. And apologies, that's meant to be a U over there in language, but it looks like an N. So this idiomatic language that she's using in her poem is specific to Indigenous Australians. Okay, nowadays we wouldn't. Well, I'm not Indigenous, and I'm assuming that you aren't either. And generally, non-Indigenous people wouldn't use language like play about and spirit things. Okay, so she's writing in her particular voice that is characteristic of her people, just to make this poem really clearly come from an Indigenous perspective. Now, next thing I've noticed is she uses a lot of word choice that shows that this corroboree is a really fun and exciting thing. So again, play about, and the fact that the didgeridoo compels. So this is some personification here. Compels means makes you want to do something. So the didgeridoo is making you want to stamp your feet and so on. Okay, so the fact that she's saying that this corroboree is play and you're compelled to do it, you're eager to do it, shows that this is such a fun and exciting event, and explains to the people that this is a tradition that's celebrated in the Aboriginal community. Okay, so there's then a lot of imagery used to draw us into this story and make us understand why the corroboree is so fun. So stamp, click, sticks, click. So these are some onomatopoeia, some words that sound like how they're pronounced, which allows us to have some oral imagery. So that word, oops, that's highlighter. That word oral, referring to the sound. Now there's also mention of ghost gums. So this is just a type of eucalyptus tree, and the fact that the ghost gums are seen during this celebration as well also is a bit of an allusion to the fact that nature is such a part of Indigenous culture. Okay, so she's in this poem, Nunakul has referenced corroborees being a part of their culture. Now she's mentioning nature as well. Okay, so she's really just describing to the people, the Australian population, what Aboriginal culture is all about. Okay, and I also want to point out the repetition in this poem. So we can see here this line, to dance corroboree. You can see dancing corroboree repeated, watching corroboree, into corroboree. Okay, now these, if you look at these lines, you can see that they're separated by even amounts. Okay, you can see there's between to dance corroboree and dancing corroboree, there's 3 lines, and there's another 3 lines, then watching corroboree, another 3 lines, then into corroboree. Okay, so this repetition in a structured format makes the poem sound almost ritualistic, like it's repeated as if it's a chant. And this is reflective of what a corroboree is like. Okay, people are dancing in rhythm, people are moving their bodies, the click sticks are going, and so she's written the poem and structured it as if it's like a corroboree itself, okay, which further draws the listener into the poem and makes them experience a corroboree. Okay, and this just develops our understanding of what a corroboree is like and how it can convey meaning through dance and sound. So yeah, Nunakul has just written this poem just to explain what a corroboree is like so that our understanding of Aboriginal culture is heightened. Okay, thank you.